projects we hope to begin after years of setting the stage for them. As we consider the matters before us this evening, grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that we may make the best decisions for those who have entrusted us to represent them. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, would you do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Sell.
Here.
Councilmember Papalardo.
Here.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Here.
Mayor Chazet.
Here.
Vice Mayor Butlin.
Here. This is a special city council meeting for the month of August. So do we have any deletions or amendments to the agenda?
I do, Mayor.
Okay.
The DeBerry Dinosaur Costume Committee recognition, we would like to postpone that. There are quite a few members who, over the last few days, could not make it, and so we would like to reserve either the next meeting or the meeting after for this presentation.
Thank you. And next in our presentations is the long-awaited draft of the Alexander Island Master Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Scheitzer, your Parks and Rec.
Wait a
Your
minute, we don't
mic's
hear
not
you.
on.
It's on, but we don't hear you.
Sound.
There we go. That sounds better.
Jason Scheitzer, your Parks and Recreation Director here at the city. And tonight we have Kimley Horn here. They're our consultants on the Alexander Island Master Plan. So we've been working with them for several months now, as you're aware, doing the feasibility study, conceptual plan, and business plan for this park. So we're here tonight to wrap it up. They're going to give you a presentation and go over all the results of the plan. And then step 2 of this process, we'll start with our department next month, going through the ECHO grant process to secure that first round of funding for this plan. So they're going to go over all the ins and outs with you all, and then take some final feedback on it before we finalize it by the end of the month. So with that being said, I'll turn over to Nick with Kimley Horn.
Thank you. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, for the time this evening. Wanted to just briefly go over some of the highlights from the draft report. Many of you have had an opportunity to potentially flip through the report. It is quite a little hefty document, and it does entail a lot of details that we want to make sure are captured as part of any future grant efforts. So we want to make sure that all public input and recommendations are also included in the document itself. So that's why it's a little more hefty here. But let's dive into this evening presentation for the draft Alexander Island report, and this is again has multiple parts to it. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this process, when we had our working session back in late March, we like to call this as a 3+ step process. What we're going to be going over tonight are steps 1 through 3, the feasibility study, the concept plan, and the business plan components. And in addition to what Jason outlined as next steps, the plus step there is the access or driveway design into the park is the last step in this, in our contract for this project. So we're ready to get going on that part as well. So the overall schedule, again, was kicked off in really kind of late February timeframe, and we had our initial public engagements really around the late March, early April timeframe. And then we've been very busy since then, really going through that public input and developing a series of conceptual plan ideas and really vetting that through with staff input and through a series of visiting comparable sites, as well as the site analysis of Alexander Island itself. And then that concluded with a business plan component, which we wrapped up as part of the draft, which was completed just here in early August for the review. And again, that last step there in regards to the driveway design process kicking off here in September. So we'll go through a couple of those steps. We'll just walk through those three main parts of the report itself. And one of the things that really is overarching through this whole process are 6 prioritized objectives that were really defined at the beginning of this process. And you'll see these really woven throughout the recommendations. These were really, again, referenced many times throughout this to make sure that we were keeping aligned with those objectives of this project. So the first part is the feasibility study itself. And we'll go through just the main parts to the feasibility study and just the highlights here. Again, we started first with just defining what the market was potentially for the park itself. And so we have 2 defined market areas that we analyze population and demographic characteristics of. The first is the primary service area, and that is the city of DeBerry's limits. And that's shown on the map in the green areas. Then we looked at a secondary service area that encompasses almost 1.8 million residents, and that is a 60-minute drive time around the facility, around the park itself. And so you'll see a couple highlights here at the bottom of the bullets of the differences between the primary and the secondary service areas, mainly within the primary service area, the city of DeBerry. Fishing, canoeing, hiking, bird watching, enjoying music, biking, yoga, those are some of the primary, most popular activities that people are participating in today. And then there's also recognition that there are some that are growing very fast as well, particularly kayaking, exercise, walking, hiking have had some substantial growth by residents of the city with higher participation rates over the last few years, maybe an outcome of the pandemic and this sort of renewed interest in the outdoors that many of our residents have. We also looked at a series of comparable facilities. In this case, we actually surveyed a number of other facilities, but we selected 4 to go and actually visit and talk with facility managers at. The takeaways really are listed here. There's many more that we had. It was very valuable in really gaining not only from a design and construction aspects, but also the operational side. We really have a great set of information from each of these, and I really want to thank Seminole County and Volusia County staff, as well as Orange County staff, to really partake in this process and help us as they had some great facilities to review. But some of those takeaways really were about providing different types of trail experiences, links, surface types, really kind of planning for peak use needs, but then really making sure that you understand what sort of the minimum needs are going in, but plan for that peak and success of the park space. And then also some of the takeaways were using composite decking and durable railing options, some of those that really are unique. And here's a few more photos of those comparables. In this case, some of the merchandise that helps with some of the fundraising. In this case, in the top right, I Blaze Trails of Tibet Butler Preserve in Orange County. Also, some of the emergency signage aspects that really pertain towards some of those natural wilderness areas. It's very similar to Alexander Island. And then down to sort of the nuts and bolts of this. In this case, installing water lines at or along boardwalks so that you can power wash those regularly so that they're safe and clean. So really a lot of great information through that process. We also looked at trends both nationally within the state and within the region, and there was a number of sources you can see listed in the bullets of information from surveys, national databases that really highlight some of these trends that are occurring. And the important part is that this information, a lot of it is coming with a lot of adjustments, a lot of changes that have occurred since the pandemic. So we're seeing new, more reliable information in the last year for this information. And so this is some of the highlights here. The aspects of fishing and camping were the most desired activities that people do not participate in today, but aspire to. So those are some of those highlights. Second fastest growing category of activities was outdoor, and followed by adventure sports, and bird watching has actually had a very large renew of interest. You can see a couple of those other activities that focus on adventure recreation and other aspects that really enjoy the outdoors quite a bit. And in the table on the right, you'll see is broken down by age groups, the top 10 activities that people aspire to do or participate in the next year for. And you can see that fishing really does remain across almost all the age groups as the number one. So it's very highly aspired to, and so having opportunities to provide that would be quite a benefit to the public. We also launched, again, a series of public assessment and workshops. We had roughly over 1,200 participants through the various online surveys, the barbecue event on the site, a lot of great input, a lot of great contribution, almost 1,000 hours of just public input into this process. So a lot of great input through this, and documented. The full survey, online survey results are in the appendix of the report. We had a lot of alignment across input from Council's working session back in late March, as well as the public input through the online survey. There was a lot of consistency in terms of what were the top priorities, what would be the most desired amenities at Alexandria Island Park, and also the general outcomes, the goals associated with the park. And so just a couple very quick highlights of the online survey. We had a series of questions. Some were as simple as the desired modes of travel to the site, and a strong recognition of allowing for, again, personal vehicles. But there's also a lot of interest in terms of being able to bike to the site, being able to walk, kayak from the water side, boat, watercraft, golf cart. You can see those in descending order. So a lot of times on a park like this, a passive kind of park, we don't get to have this many modes of transportation that can access it. So this is a great opportunity to really be able to connect to all of these modes. The next chart on the right is the most important facilities, and this is just the top 10. We asked folks to identify the 4 most important facilities, and you see the number of votes next to each of those. Restrooms was number 1. And so that was definitely something that was in our recommendations as a phase 1 item. But you can see other uses here, some more consistent with the potential goals and desired activities at the park than others. We also asked respondents to identify the 4 least desired activities or facilities. And again, the top 4 are listed, or top 10, I'm sorry, are listed on the left. And number 1 is amphitheater and stage. There's definitely a recognition or a strong desire not to really create events or that would have a lot of parking needs, a lot of infrastructure needs, and also a lot of noise in such a natural, pristine environment. And then on the right, you can see preferred actions. And there's 7 different actions identified. And you can see from descending order, providing a series of walking trails, paths, connections was definitely the most desired, but very close to that was the idea of minimizing the footprint of development and really highlighting the natural, unique habitats of the site. And so very consistent from what we heard from you all in late March as well. So the last step of the feasibility study was identifying the site program. And there's a lot of information on this slide. I'll just give a couple highlights here. The site program was ultimately identified and prioritized into phase 1 and 2 recommendations. And so phase 1 was really aligned with all the prior input that was received to date and highlighted really the base elements, the base amenities that would be needed to really activate the entire park space. And so having entrance improvements, again, tied to the next step of this process as well, but also providing initial parking, initial trails and trailheads, kayak launch, again, unpaved hiking trails throughout, picnic areas, a restroom facility, maintenance facilities, signage, not just the regulatory and required signage, but also interpretive signage, educational signage, and then also stormwater management, really designed for the full development of the site, but having that as initially developed so it's completed and ready to go for the next phases. Phase 2 is really highlighted as something that's very flexible. These were really the rest of the recommendations that we had, but it also is something that can be really implemented kind of piecemeal. It is really tied to the availability of funding and potential receipt of additional grants. So, but this is really highlighting, again, additional amenities throughout, really tied towards completing the overall berm trail loop around the site, and we'll dive into that in just a second. Providing a pier, fishing pier component, a small natural play area, as well as some observational deck and tower areas, and then an overall park facility that would house department offices, storage, and also provide a flexible indoor space. There's a small space that can have a lot of different uses associated with that could potentially open up and look right out towards the river. So let's dive into that concept just a bit. So this is just the overall, and we do have some display boards in the back of the room for those that would like to take a look later on. But the highlight here really is with the most concentration of development really in the upland areas in the very northeast area of the site. And the idea of along the berm, and you can see with all the orange kind of call outs, all the different nodes that are along there in terms of observations and overlook areas, roughly every 500 to 800 feet, there is something, a rest area, something that provides an opportunity to really, again, see the environment both internally to the site and externally of the site. So then zooming into the upland areas, we were able to identify an access point right off Fort Florida Road at the 90-degree turn, really straightening that out into a three-way intersection, and having a driveway that enters into the site and immediately goes to the right, and really has utilizing an existing open space for the parking in the main facilities. The parking areas concentrate about 88 parking spaces, and that includes additional spaces for buses, golf carts, and also ADA parking within that space. On the north end of the site, you'll see some other facilities, and that's the aquatics research facility, the freshwater aquatics facility, and that's really loosely based off some of their recommendations, some of their ideas associated with that. But there is space for that and a potential connection from the primary park facility and parking areas up to the research facility, should that be realized. And then there's a series of loops that we have in terms of trails. We have what we call a river's edge trail, and that connects from the parks facility out towards the river, towards some picnic areas, kayak launch, as well as the fishing pier. And then we have the Oaks Hammock area, and that's a loop trail, approximately a third of a mile. And that has a picnic area associated with it and really enjoys that shaded environment of the hammocks. And then finally, the trail berm loop. And as far as phase 1, we would hope to get from really the concentration of the park center all the way down to the very southern tip of the site, what we're calling the Peninsula Overlook area. And that would be approximately 0.7 miles of trail to get to that overlook area. And then with the goal of providing the entire loop of the trail along the berm, and that would be approximately 1.7 miles of trail for just the trail loop itself. So we want to then provide a couple perspectives of what this would look like. This is an idea of what the concept would look like on full build out. And so you can see the parking areas, and this would be primarily gravel parking with some constraints to make sure that vehicles are managed within that space. And then ADA parking closest to the park facility. You'll see the facility itself is the largest building sort of in the center of the image. And immediately right of that would be the restroom that would be recommended as part of phase 1. And then you'll see some highlights with the white circles there that highlight where the fishing pier would be, as well as a overlook tower and observation platform along the river. And you can see the orange dash lines represent the trails and the various loops of those walking paths. And then this would be this representation of phase one recommendations. So everything is really set up to really have that flexibility. Again, the restroom facility would be there. And we'd essentially have an open lawn space for use until additional funding is obtained then for the primary park facility. Just below where we'd be standing, or where the bird is right now, would be the maintenance facility, kind of tucked back away from those views. So overall, with the cost estimates, phase one we have total just a little over $4.5 million. That includes a fairly healthy contingency as part of this plan. But you can see some of the highlights here. Primarily, the largest amount of funding is really going towards the development of trails, which is what we really heard from a lot of folks to have, as well as the restroom facilities for that. Phase two, as I mentioned, again, is very flexible and can be very piecemeal in terms of a lot of these pieces can be developed by themselves as funding is available, or if funding can be obtained for all items here, you can see a total for the build out of the rest of the amenities shown in this plan. Just below that table, you'll see an alternate two. And so we wanted to also include a couple different options, particularly for the berm trail. So we did walk the entire berm trail, GPS locations of it to make sure that we could have a trail facility around there and how much would actually really need to be boardwalk. It's actually in a very good condition. And so there's a very small portion, from our opinion, would need boardwalk right away in order to connect that, and that's on the very far south side. So it wouldn't necessarily be part of phase one of what we've included, but we wanted to include some different options for that berm trail. Our recommendation is potentially initially to do it as a natural surface trail, but there are options if it is potentially viewed as a popular asset. It could be potentially paved as well, or actual large portions or all of it could be boardwalk as well. And so we had those alternates in there as part of this. So the last section is the business plan. And we'll again just go through, there's two main parts to it. The first part here is really the projected operations and management pro forma. And within that, there was three steps that we completed. There was first a financial analysis, then there was alternate funding strategies, and then finally an operations and maintenance plan completed. And you can see some of the recommendations in regards to some of the potential staffing needs just as this park would potentially be ramped up with facilities. But really, it's something that additional city resources will be needed to really apply to potentially administer the continuation of the grants. They're certainly well underway in terms of seeking grant funding for this opportunity, and that will continue to hopefully be the case for full build out of the site. Operation costs for phase one is estimated to be $360,000 for additional staffing, commodities, other resources needed for just the operations side, and then a potential $545,000 annual operations for once phase two fully is developed. There are some revenue opportunities with the facilities recommended. There are some initially as part of phase one, but more are added once the potential park facility is completed, and there's the flexible indoor space, and some of the other amenities are added. So it starts to ramp up with a potential 5-year ramp-up period for those revenues. And then finally, note of the capital equipment recommendations total approximately $500,000 total for the site. With the city already owning the site, maintenance is already underway with some clearing and prep of those sites, but that continuation of maintenance, since the city already owns the site, will be needed as part of phase one as recommended. There's a list of the equipment needs that would be associated with really maintaining the site and the materials as part of phase one and going forward. And then finally, the recommended or projected annual visitors, just under 30,000 visitors, or about 80 or so every single day. And so this is very much in line with a lot of the other comparable facilities in the area that we also visited in terms of visitorship. But this could be certainly something that, as popularity grows within that, that figure could go up. Again, just delineating some of those projected annual expenditures between Phase 1 and Phase 2 and 3, or Phase 1 and 2 combined on the left, and then also those projected annual revenues for Phase 1 and Phase 1 and 2 combined. And you can see those. The last piece here is the marketing plan. And so this had, again, 4 breakout areas that we're focused on in terms of brand and identity development and recommendations for those. Targeted markets, as well as marketing channels and tactics. And then finally, strategic partners. And the city already has a lot of great partners in place that will really benefit this community, this project. But building upon those even more would be a great avenue. And you can see some of those on the right, some of those examples of what some of the similar facilities that we had looked at also include in terms of some of their marketing outreach with Facebook, with newsletter, with other brochures and other activities that can be held in festivals at some of their spaces. So those are great examples for this. But continuing to budget for those needs of resources and staff resources as a way to promote Alexander Island Park would be great. And then also utilizing survey feedback on a regular basis to really determine what those best techniques and tactics are for marketing, both within the primary service area as well as the secondary service area. So the next steps, this is the last slide here, is just highlighting what we've completed so far in August with the management plan. And the next steps really are to finalize the management plan over the next few weeks here and prepare it for the city's application for the ECHO grant, and then an award of the ECHO grant hopefully in early of 2024. And then also the access design, developing the base design for the intersection improvements and driveway, the permitting, and it's really the first of the hopefully will be a wave of construction projects coming soon to Alexander Island to really open that to the public. So with that, I'd like to open up to any questions.
Councilmember Sell, do you have questions or comments?
I have a few. With the berm, you said most of it is in pretty good shape. Is it in pretty good shape? Like, does ADA, is that going to play a role in thing for access for folks who are in wheelchairs?
So not all of the trail length has to be to ADA compliancy. We recommend that the trail loops be paved as part of Phase 1. We do have only about a 170-foot section of the berm on the very south end would really need to have a boardwalk. But our idea is what we've included in Phase 1 is, again, to get to the peninsula overlook area and have that maintained as an 8-foot cleared natural surface trail so we can get a gator down for maintenance and for emergency uses. And that would be something that, again, as part of the capital equipment needs, would be to able to consistently maintain that natural surface at a relatively smooth condition and compacted condition.
You also mentioned something that I didn't figure in anything, though, would be more related to Jason, would be somebody on site 7 days a week, like a park ranger or park person, or would it just require one person on site 7 days a week or several employees and they? That's part of the staffing recommendations is to have that 7 day a week maintenance presence. So it would be 2 additional potential maintenance positions to cover that for a full week of coverage. Yeah. Now, some parks I know have like people that live on site. Mm-hmm. That's not an option, or it is an option, but.
Yeah, and we talked, like Seminole County has a couple sites that have caretaker, and we did get their example agreements, and looking at those, there are certainly some pros and cons to having a caretaker on site, but that ultimately could be something that's still explored. But the idea is, at least while the park is generally open, that there would be staff presence would be ideal.
I have to mention this. So fishing was at the top of every age category except
Yes.
18 to 24. It didn't drop to
Correct.
second. It didn't go to third. It didn't go to 10. It just disappeared. What are people doing between the ages of 18 and 24? They're not fishing. Also, disc golf. It was near the top
Yeah.
and at the bottom.
Yeah.
It was preferred and then least preferred, which I thought was a little bit strange. Is the park going to be dog friendly at all? I know nobody wants a dog park apparently, but is it dog friendly?
So our recommendation would be to not have it dog friendly as far as the trails go, mainly because of the remoteness of some of the trails, and just some of the aspects of just being so close to the river. And if it is open to the dogs, we'd want to make sure that there are plenty of doggy stations for picking up, droppings, things like that, because we'd want to make sure that's.
Gemini does it. I mean, we can take our dogs there and walk them and police them too as well. They also have a dog park. We don't really utilize it that much. It's getting kind of run down. My other question was, looked like some of the transportation opportunities that people liked was getting there by boat and getting there by kayak. And currently, the beach area there, we've already had an issue with people that want to pull their boat up and hang out there. And then I heard some ways that we can prevent that. Is there a way to have some access point for kayaks and boats to pull up and get onto the park? Because you were talking about one access point too, which would be drive-in.
Yeah.
So is that on the table, or is that something that we need to discuss a little bit more?
Yeah, this is a very unique site in that it is accessible and will likely be accessed by both sides, really by the road side as well as the water side. And that's why, as part of Phase 1, we did recommend the kayak launch be implemented in there, really because that is, again, one of the highest desired needs as well as from folks, but really the recognition that that's going to be something that's desired both from folks coming to the site as well as wanting to launch from the site. Ultimately, with implementation of Phase 2, with fishing pier and the kayak, it starts to really kind of fill up that zone of the beach area to discourage some of the crafting and the landing of some of the motorcraft. That's something that will likely continue to be there, but to minimize that into an area would be the ideal solution, I think, for this. That way it doesn't kind of take over that entire beach stretch.
Mayor, may I respond to that?
Yes, please.
We are working on getting some proposals for some consultants. What's unique about this particular situation is that the city, when they purchase this property, purchases the land underneath the river. So we actually own underneath the river. That gives us some proprietary rights. We're working with the consultant to possibly, I want to use the word partition, part of the river, to prevent motorboats from entering the beach area. It's a long process. You have to go through the Army Corps of Engineers, and we're working on possibly piggybacking a contract that, with the city of Orlando that they have. And we've had some conversations about the feasibility of this. And so you're working through the Army Corps of Engineers, you're working through FDEP to possibly, and you may have heard me use the term safe harbor, is that there's a portion of this particular river outside Alexander Island that's not part of the main part of the river, that we can partition it off so that folks can kayak without, interference with motorboats, but also for safety reasons as well. And then the other aspect is that certainly that some of the parts of the berm around long-term can have certain docks and everything else where people can get off their boat and enjoy the berm as well. So, but again, that in this particular plan, we're looking maybe at Phase 3 or 4 for those types of amenities. The research center, if and when it does come, they will definitely have a dock because they'll be accessing the river all the time with them and FWC. And so those are some of the aspects there as we get into that. So I just want to let you know that we are working on some detail regarding that. And hopefully in the future, next 60 days, we'll bring you an agenda item to consider about piggybacking and looking into partitioning part of the river.
Do you know the life expectancy of the composite wood?
We actually, there's some images in here of, at Black Bear, where it's nearing almost 20 years age, and it's still, in good condition. Just takes regular cleaning on that. Typical timber boardwalk, a lot of those, from what we looked at, comparable facilities, it's a regular replacement of a lot of the boards, and total life expectancy, they really start to, the railings and that really start to go down in terms of conditions after about 10 or 12 years.
So looking at the presentation, the booklet, you guys did some really good work.
Thank you.
And I also think you get it. We could sit here and nitpick little things all day long. Just looking at it from 10,000 feet, I love it. We're going to make it ours, We can't really overthink things too much. It's just going to ruin it. I like about everything I see, and I kind of agree with what the public has kind of pointed out as priorities. So I think we're on the path to having a really, really nice park.
Councilmember Papalardo?
So I was totally taken away by that overhead view. That is very impressive. Things that, and I'll keep this brief, the things that pop in my head are 88 spots enough parking? Because it said 81 average daily visitors. I'm sure that's average over a period of time because there will be peaks. And so do you think there's going to be a lot of pressure on peak times?
So our idea is there is the potential for additional parking for overflow grass. And so we wanted to make sure we, again, plan for a little bit more. But we also do advise that part of this is, with it being so multimodal connected, is to start to encourage, less of the park space, particularly the uplands, being there for parking and more about the other accessible modes to the site.
Absolutely, yeah. Because, we are a little limited on the upland space, and we don't want to squander that on parking.
I think Black Bear was a great example where, with their parking lot expansion, it actually brings it close to this number as well with their expansion. So that's been a big relief for Black Bear, as they've had historically a lot of issue in terms of parking at peak times, weekends.
Excellent. And then just as a comment, I'm interested in reducing paved surfaces, including paved trails, as much as possible where that makes sense. I understand we have certain limitations. And then I've actually been very much swayed on that observation tower. I was not interested in that last time I saw it pop up. I was like, it scares me a little bit, but that's going to be really special. And then just as a final comment, emphasize minimal or zero motorized watercraft as very much a concern of mine. People and motorized watercraft will probably not mix well, and I'm a little nervous about that. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Stevenson?
Thank you. Yes, this is a lot of great information from the residents. I am glad that there's consistency from what we were talking about as well as what the residents feel. I didn't quite hear an answer, though, as far as how do we settle that with the disc golf, with them being high and low?
Yeah.
Most wanted and least wanted.
Yeah. So certainly, by having a lot of wants for it and a lot of dislikes on it, it definitely creates a controversial amenity, whereas a lot of the others were pretty consistent in terms of broad support. So with that, we looked at the objectives that we had for the project, again, the 6 original objectives, and felt that the disc golf started to stray away from some of that in terms of the activity, the type of activity. And so that was our recommendation, as to this site isn't necessarily appropriate for that type of activity. And certainly we could help look for a different location for disc golf.
We have
Yeah, we have a
two courses
Yeah, of course,
within a
and,
mile.
Right,
and
yeah.
they breed more and more desire to have even more courses. So
Gotcha.
that could be, yeah.
That could be just part of it, that they want more golf,
Yes.
different
Yeah.
disc golf, okay. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of putting disc golf in this park, being as how we have the other park so close by with those amenities. One fishing pier, is that the only one?
So that's what we were calling as the fishing pier closest to the park facilities. There are a couple other spots that certainly have the opportunity for fishing. In Phase 2, we recommend at the Peninsula Overlook area to have an actual platform that goes out to the water. That's another potential fishing area. And then along that southern edge, we have another boardwalk that pops out out to the river. That's another, with an overlook area and seating. That's another fishing spot. So there's multiple locations for that. Yeah.
Well, I definitely like the different trail loops from different sizes. I think that's great. I like how they travel and traverse the majority of the property. Again, as far as the paved trails, I kind of agree with Councilmember Papalardo to either minimize that, or I don't know if there's some sort of paving material that is more permeable as well as ADA accessible, so that we're not disturbing the water, or, if there is water that ends up getting there from storms or whatever, that it's not going to get damaged from that standing water. Other than that, yeah, definitely the restrooms, definitely a priority in the first phase. The parking lot, this whole area looks very nice. As far as the boardwalk, I would be leaning towards the composite deck, I think, even though it's more expensive. I know you say that the berm is, in good shape, and I know that cows used to walk along the berm before, but I would be concerned that if you have residents, especially large numbers of residents continuously walking on it, that could change the condition of the berm over time and create safety problems. So definitely think we need the boardwalk there with side rails for safety. Other than that, I'm excited to see this really start happening. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Butland?
Yes, for those of you that don't see, this is the size of our packet, so there's a lot to look at.
200-some pages. if
200
you're
and some
jealous.
pages, so it's not small. But thank you, this is very impressive. I'm very happy with what options we have in here. I agree with my constituents here that the boardwalk, to me, is more priority than to have the paved berm. For future maintenance, 10 years from now, how much of it do we have to replace? Where, power washing it's easy if you have these stations. So I'm all for that, because I think it'll be easier for strollers, wheelchairs, anyone that wants to go on there and do that. So I'm all for that. How close are we on this aquatic center? I mean, are they on board with this yet? Are they still in conversation?
They're still in conversation.
Okay.
They are struggling a little bit with their architecture and et cetera, et cetera. We just had a call this week in which we're trying to figure out leasing options, and I think the state's going to get involved, and that opens up a whole world of opportunity if the state wants to get involved and lease that 3.5 acres. And so, it's ongoing, but it's not going to be a fast process. It's going to be a slow process.
Okay.
They're taking their time, and quite frankly, we're really not in a hurry, but it's really up to them how fast they want to go.
And then I noticed there's only restrooms at the front. So with a 2-mile berm,
Yeah.
my question is, should there be one at the end of the 2 miles or 1.5 miles?
Phase 3?
I'm just concerned with that, especially if you have picnic areas and people are hanging out a little bit longer. I know you probably can't put water down there, but maybe a small bathroom with the septic or something down there. I don't know what can be done there, but to me, 2 mile berm, or, 2 miles down the road, one way, and then back the other way is almost 4 miles. That's a long way to have to go to the bathroom.
So to the peninsula itself would be about 0.7 miles each way. So yeah, about 1.4 miles back and forth.
Back and
And so certainly there are lots of great alternatives. Yeah, running utilities out there is probably exceedingly costly for one, but there are great examples for passive vault or single vault toilets. And those could be options for there. There's actually at the area that we had to identify as a peninsula overlook area, there's actually quite a large area for that's a little bit raised up that for picnicking and other areas that
Yeah, I
could
saw
be
that
used.
on your map, but I'm just wondering if you're that far away and you have to go all the way back to the front, and that could be cumbersome. Kids, just all that. So if that can be an option that's thrown, I don't know what phase you would put that in. If we're not doing the berm area, maybe phase 2. But that's something I would like to consider seeing. Otherwise, great job. I'm very impressed with it. Thank you. Looks good to me.
I want to say thank you for the broad base of input that you synthesized into this plan, and I think that by and large, it reflects the vision of the council, the city staff, and our residents, and that was the goal. And I am anxious to get phase 1 done because I want to open it up to the people. There are a couple of things that stand out to me that I will just mention. Observation points were number 4 on the one list and kayaks 6. So we will have kayaks at the beginning. If we don't pave a trail and we are careful with our money, the next priority item out of currently phase 2 for me would be the observation deck and tower. That will be unique. We don't have any park that I am aware of in this entire area that has such a feature. And they're, of course, positioned on the edge of the river. It will be a spectacular kind of feature, probably one of our most popular features in the park. It also, this is going really far afield, but it also has a little bit of a historical connection in that there used to be a tower at Gateway. So then we would have a tower at Alexander Island. And fishing was at the top of all these lists. Mm-hmm. And we don't really in phase 1 have fishing. So for me, a fishing pier or opportunity and the observation deck and tower are the 2 that are currently in phase 2 that if we, through extraordinary management, were able to put into phase 1 or shortly on the heels of phase 1 and before the rest of phase 2, that I would be strongly supportive of. The tower and the fishing pier will set us apart. There is a fishing pier equivalent at Gemini. There is no observation deck and tower that I am aware of in parks anywhere near here. So to me, that's a spectacular amenity. The number looks way higher than it was on the draft that I saw in the early July when I was hopeful that we could finesse it. It looks like 3 times as much, or 4 times. But that would be my feedback for there. I do like composite decking, and I understand that it is incredibly expensive, and that we might need to do the first phase with crushed shell or whatever on the berm. I don't like impervious surfaces. I want to see them minimized, as Councilmember Stevenson has mentioned, perhaps others. But I put in a dock and stairway to the dock in 2008 at our house. My husband and I did, and it is in perfect condition. And we're between 14 and 15 years. Now, it doesn't have the same kind of usage as this would, but I also look at Central Florida Zoo, where they've taken out all of the wood decking. Everything's going to the composite, and with the expectation of very long life. It is the way to do it for longevity's sake. So I would offer that input. You say that I appreciate that you looked at Black Bear. I remember bringing that up when your first list of comparables didn't include that. And they did double their parking, and now it will be about the same as we will start with. My question for you, going to the Vice Mayor's comment about bathrooms at the extreme end of the property, does Black Bear, which just expanded their boardwalk significantly, do they have restroom facilities deep along the path, or are they closer to the parking?
Just off the parking, they have a
Okay, and
portable restroom.
they're incredibly popular. That lot is full most of the time. It's heavily used, and they've got a very long boardwalk. No bathrooms beyond this point. We did it for golf carts. We can do it for bathrooms. So that would be my input. To the degree that we can do financial magic, city manager, financial magic, observation deck and tower, fishing pier, I would love, love, love to see them before I'm out of office for 8 years. So that would be my feedback. Thank you so much for this presentation. City Manager, did you have any wrap-up comments you wanted to make, or was this the feedback that you and Kimley Horn needed?
No, it's great. Your feedback's great. Everything's flexible. If you want more fishing piers, that's what, after they're finished with all
I want
this.
a fishing pier
To
begin with.
So the world is our oyster, as they say, and we can make various adjustments, and future councils will make various adjustments.
Observation deck and tower.
Yep. So.
It looks so pretty there.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. Next, we move on to our first public hearing. The staff is requesting the City Council approve the second reading of Ordinance 09-2023, amending the development agreement of the DeBary Town Park Transit-Oriented Development Project to include certain waivers, and this is a quasi-judicial hearing. On your screen is the order of a quasi-judicial process in our city. I am mentioning this as I am required to do by Resolution 1521, and we will follow it, but I believe that the people in here who are involved in this hearing have heard it only maybe a dozen times. So I will not do it as in-depth as I do when we have an applicant that is not familiar with the process. But first, I would like the city attorney to read Ordinance 09-2023.
Ordinance number 09-2023, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of DeBary, Florida, approving a First Amendment to Development Agreement as approved by Ordinance number 12-2022 with Falcone and Associates, LLC, for the DeBary Town Park Transit-Oriented Development Project, being a multi-use project on approximately 32.17 more or less acres of land located on the west side of U.S. Highway 1792, having Volusia County tax parcel identification numbers 900-401-230010 and 9004-00000040, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Thank you. City Clerk, would you swear in the witnesses for this hearing? Could you put the process back up, IT? Thank you.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Now is the time for disclosure of any ex parte communications by the City Council. Councilmember Sell, do you have anything to disclose?
I do not.
Councilmember Pappalardo?
None.
Councilmember Stevenson?
None.
Vice Mayor Butlin?
Nope.
And I have none. So now we will move into the presentation. The city staff will go first, followed by the applicant, followed by any public input that we have public comment cards for, and then there will be rebuttal, and the council will have discussion and consideration and make a decision. Thank you.
All right, for the record, I'm Stephen Bapp, Growth Management Director, City of DeBerry. The request is to approve certain waivers for the DeBerry Town Park Development Agreement pertaining specifically to priority streets and local streets. A quick project overview. As stated in the reading of the ordinance, it is a 32-acre project, which in the end of construction will have 229 townhomes, 36 live-work units, 31 single-family units, and 4 commercial parcels. General orientation of the project is south of Benson Junction, west of 1792. It is part of our whole TOD core. To the south of this project will be the Mosaics Main Street project, and to the east of the project across 1792 is Spring Walk at the Junction and other commercial parcels which will be built at a later time. A general orientation to the site. This is the lot layout indicating primarily townhomes throughout the whole development, focused on the center of the project. On the north of the project will be the single-family homes. On the edges will be the retail units or commercial units and some live-work units as well. Tonight we're going to discuss 2 types of roads. One really is the pedestrian priority streets, which are indicated in orange, which connect 1792 to the core of Spine Road, which is called Main Street. Then also we'll mention the local streets, which are indicated in yellow here, which connect those to crossroads. Project timeline. Project began with its initial approval back in April of 2022 with the sketch plan approved by the council. In October of that year, a development agreement was adopted with several series of waivers attached to that. After that, we gave a development order, and that allowed the applicant to move forward with this, the Development Review Committee's examination of its pre-plat and engineering plan. As most projects do, it went through a series of reviews from the DRC, and after the second review by the DRC and staff comments being provided to the applicant requested a meeting to be held to discuss some of the comments made by staff. So on June 28th of this year, we met with the applicant, and we've determined that there's 2 waivers really that need to be given to proceed forward with this, and that brings us here tonight. The waivers focus around the streetscape composition. This is a profile of a LDC requirement for a pedestrian priority street. Indicated in the center is the middle of the road right-of-way. And moving out to either edge, you will have a 10-foot drive lane, an 8-foot parking avenue, a 6-foot street tree furniture zone, which is a concrete strip with tree plantings, and then followed that by open sidewalk space, which in the LDC is required to be between 6 to 8 feet. Abutting that would be, in the case of Town Park, would be a front yard, and then followed by a residence of a townhome. The requirement remains the same for the other classification, which is called a local street. The only difference here is the width of the sidewalk zone is 6 feet, not 6 to 8 feet, but the configuration remains the same. So at the end of discussion with the applicant, there are 2 waivers that are coming forward for approval tonight. The first waiver reads as you see on the screen, and it is really inverting that street tree furniture zone and putting the sidewalk zone, clear sidewalk zone, next to the curb or the parking area. And then the street tree furniture zone would be composed of grass and tree plantings rather than the concrete and tree pit which the LDC requires. The following illustration is a little more zoomed in. If you see on the left is the LDC requirement showing the street and the parking, parallel parking, adjacent to a street tree furniture zone consisting of a concrete strip and tree pits interspersed, followed then by the sidewalk clear zone, followed then by the front yard and building frontage. The request before you tonight for the priority street, pedestrian priority street, would invert or flip those 2 sidewalk or those two zones after the parking. So when you move into towards the residence, you'd have the parking, you'd have a clear sidewalk zone of 6 feet rather than a 6 to 8 feet. You would have the grass and tree planting strip, and then you'd have the front yard and the building frontage. The second request that's driven, and to make this compliant with the LDC, would be get a waiver also for the local street. Remains exactly the same, reads exactly the same as the previous waiver I read, and configured will be proposed to be just like the priority street. So the proposal would be the street and the parallel parking, the sidewalk clear zone of 6 feet, the grass and tree plantings of 6 feet, the front yard, and then the building. Staff looked at the waivers and the impact on the land development code and consistency. On the first of the street tree zone composition, we find that to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the LDC, primarily for the reasons that it meets the intent of a tree-lined public space. It doesn't impact the pedestrian flow by making the street tree furniture zone grass and tree, and it provides a logical transition from the public space to the private space of the townhome. So staff sees that meets the requirement. The second evaluation is reversing the order of the sidewalk zone and the street tree furniture zone by placing the open sidewalk zone next to the curb, and then the street tree furniture zone between that sidewalk and the front yards. Again, we find that it doesn't impede any pedestrian flow. It meets the intent of a tree-lined public space. It allows cars to unload onto the sidewalk. But more importantly, due to the nature of Town Park, there will not be any businesses that would be impacted by inverting those streets. For example, a business may want to have an open display of its goods for sale or have a sidewalk cafe. But since there are townhomes and parks which parallel these priority streets, it would not be an issue for DeBary Town Park. Now onto the street width. The LDC requires a 6 to 8 foot sidewalk zone. The applicant is requesting a 6-foot zone. Initially, staff recommended an 8-foot zone at first reading to the City Council, basically because it would allow for a mixed-use, non-vehicular traffic to intermingle on a wider avenue of approach along the pedestrian priority street. Since the first reading, for the last 3 weeks, we've been working hand in hand with engineer and other applicant staff. And staff evaluated the 6-foot sidewalk width and some mitigation measures which should make it acceptable and compliant more with the intent of the LDC. First of all would be the reduction of non-vehicular mixed traffic on sidewalks. How this would be achieved with the pedestrian priority streets would be allowed to have golf carts traversing, and that would remove that large obstruction from pedestrian traffic off the sidewalk and onto the main principal roadway of travel. The golf carts can travel on the pedestrian streets due to the applicant will post the streets at a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit. And also, as our other streets in DeBary, streets will be augmented with proper safety signage stating golf cart area, etc., to mitigate and make vehicle drivers or car and truck drivers aware of the golf cart area they are about to enter. And also looking at Main Street, which is that north-south principal road bisecting DeBary Town Park and then Mosaic Main Street. There are really 6 ways an automobile can get onto Main Street. The first way, really, we feel that I logically would take, if I was coming from the north, would perhaps come down Benson Junction. That would give direct access to the Main Street area and getting a lot of the traffic flow away from the townhome area. Also, DeBary Town Park has 2 approaches which disperse traffic further. One to the north, which will have planned and established turn lane from 1792, then a smaller access point, which is a left in or right in, right out, with which I call the Town Park South entrance. And to the south of this project, there will be 3 access points to Main Street. Mosaic, the template for Mosaic shows 2 roads accessing Main Street. Then also the principal avenue that would most likely be accessed from the south would be the Fort Florida Road access. So based on these mitigation measures and other examinations of evidence, staff would recommend the City Council adopt ordinance number 9-2023. And if adopted tonight, the applicant will move forward and resubmit their plans and receive a development order when all other outstanding staff comments are resolved. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to make any comments?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. For the record, Mark Watts with the law firm of Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard, DeLand. I'm here with the project engineer and our applicant, and really just wanted to stand up and thank staff. We've appreciated the conversation over the past several weeks. Agree with the recommendation before you this evening with regard to kind of keeping the widths at the 6 feet, but providing for the other mitigating approaches for golf carts to be able to access the other streets and provide for safe circulation. We actually think it comes up with a safer approach than trying to squeeze them all into the sidewalk area. So we appreciate manager and Mr. Bapp and all the rest of the staff working with us, and here to answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. Do we have any public participation, City Clerk?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay. So we'll move on to council questions and comments. Councilmember Sell.
I was going to argue for the 8-foot, but I much prefer a golf cart on the street rather than mixed with pedestrians. So I think that's actually a better plan. I will tell you, it's my only other comment is in Winn-Dixie with the golf carts, there's really no set parking spots for the golf carts, and they get rather creative at night by parking up on berms and sides of trees and just about anywhere they can throw their golf cart. So just forewarn you that it's quite possible that somebody at some point in time is going to try to park their cart up on that area there. So I don't know how you could prevent it, but it may or may not happen with the golf carts. So
Yeah, fair point.
That's it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Papalardo.
I prefer this arrangement. I think there's real benefit to discouraging an overly welcoming path toward private residences. Being more narrow, I think this will assist differentiating an obvious public and retail segment from private and residential spaces. And of course, moving the golf carts to the roadway is preferable for the interaction with the pedestrians. So I like where this is going.
Councilmember Stevenson.
I would agree with my colleagues. I don't have any problems with these waivers.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Butlin.
I agree as well. I think everything that you've changed and made accommodations for the staff and the applicant, I think it works well. I'm anxious to get the shovel in the ground and hoping that you guys can move forward after all this.
As are we.
Thank you.
Just a couple of comments. With the flip, which I don't have a major problem, the flip of the sidewalk, and I'm envisioning this, and if we keep the tree grass planting at 6 feet, the person purchasing the townhouse thinks, okay, my front yard has gone from 20 feet to 26 feet, and there are trees planted there. Is there going to be anything that visually separates their 20-foot front yard from this public 6-foot tree-planted strip, which prior would have been by the road and easily defined as not part of their property? Couple of things. One, I get that it'll make the townhouses more appealing because it looks like the front yard's bigger. But what I see happen when we have new houses, infill houses built, and we have maintained the trees across the front, some of which are in right-of-ways, some of which are just outside of right-of-ways and maybe part of the tree count we've insisted on. The new owner moves in and they go like, that tree blocks my view. I'm going to just take it down. Is there going to be anything to visually define or clearly define for the owners that is public green space that we've allowed not to be concrete with tree holes? We've taken it to green, and now it's up against their yard.
I'm going to look back at my engineer just to verify this, but I don't think there's anything from a signage standpoint or a fencing standpoint that would
We
differentiate.
have like a 12-inch little, looks like black wrought iron, but isn't really or something?
Good evening, Council Neil Shacharn, the applicant. There will be enhanced landscaping and hardscape. There will, in each,
Hardscape, I'm liking that sense.
yes. In each front courtyard, there'll be a, I think it's about 3.5 feet metal fence for each
That's
unit.
what
So
I'm
it'll be
asking.
defined.
That's what I'm
And that's
asking,
how we'll
because
police
I
it.
could see very quickly, okay, I'm buying this thing and I have a 26-foot front yard, and 5 years down the road, one of the household members says, that's really blocking my view, so they lay waste to it or something. It needs to be clearly defined. It sounds like your architectural standards will take care of that.
That's right.
That was my concern.
Well, and
Yes,
I
city
think
manager.
these are private streets.
They are,
They'll have an HOA
Correct.
yeah.
that will govern that, and the
And
HOA will be
no one
required to
ever-
maintain.
No one ever violates an HOA rule that
Well,
I've heard of.
It's just another layer of maintenance and
And
requirements.
That was where I was actually going was in
Yeah.
addition to the
Yeah.
hardscape and landscaping, everything else, you'll have, these will be separate tracks from the lots. They'll be.
I just don't want to lose the public green space to someone's sense of a proprietary larger yard.
Sure, understood.
Fair enough,
I think we've got it addressed.
fair enough. And I do appreciate the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, and then that is low enough, you can have the golf carts on the road, and then the sidewalk can be 6 feet. I'm okay with that.
Mayor?
Yes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 09-2023, amending the development agreement of the DeBary Town Park Transit-Oriented Development Project to add certain waivers to Exhibit C.
Second.
Vice Mayor Butland?
Yes.
Councilmember Papalardo?
Yes.
Councilmember Sell?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. The next public hearing is a regular public hearing. It is a staff request that the City Council approve the second reading of Ordinance 10-2023, amending the Code of Ordinances to repeal the requirement for the registration of abandoned property and to add additional clarifications. City Attorney, would you read the resolution?
Ordinance number 10-2023, an ordinance of the City of DeBary, Florida, amending Article 10 of Chapter 30 to repeal provisions requiring mortgagees to register abandoned property with the city, modifying definitions, and making other adjustments to such article consistent therewith, and providing for severability, conflicts, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen Babb, Growth Management Director. I'll be giving the presentation. How do,
Whoa.
try that again, I'm not, okay. All right, in 2012, the city adopted an ordinance requiring property owners to register abandoned properties within the city. The ordinance, when it was established, also required the city to maintain a database of all and any abandoned properties in the city. Since adoption of the ordinance, the city had received no registrants of abandoned property. And since the ordinance, the city has handled abandoned property situations without the need of a specific established database. City staff presented this item to the City Council on August 2nd, 2023 at first reading. Some of the ordinance highlights. The ordinance, when written or adopted, will eliminate the requirement to register abandoned properties within the city. It would also eliminate the requirement to maintain said database. However, it's going to change the definitions of abandoned property to include all structures on the parcel. What that means are sheds, garages, and other things that people can get into and habitate or live in. Also, it'll continue to emphasize that the owners will remain responsible for maintaining any abandoned properties found within the city. Some more specific changes: the revision to the purpose of intent, which is the opening paragraph, removes the italicized letters of specifically establish an abandoned and residential commercial property program. So that's the only thing that changes in the purpose and intent of the maintenance ordinance. Also, two things will be clarified. One is the abandoned real property term, which is revised to add structures occupied by people not otherwise authorized to occupy such structure, building, or dwelling unit. That means a non-property owner moving into a property that's abandoned. Then accessible property, again, kind of redefines and refers to all other structures that could be occupied by a human person. Also, other revisions, it removes probably about a page and a half of notes on how to establish and process abandoned properties and how to maintain the database. Then also it continues to clarify that, that the abandoned property owners are responsible for the maintenance of their property. The recommendation is staff recommends that the City Council adopt ordinance number 10-2023. And if adopted tonight, staff will make the appropriate changes to Chapter 30 of the Code of Ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment, City Clerk?
No, ma'am, there is not.
All right. Councilmember Sell?
No comments.
Councilmember Papalardo?
These additional items, like explaining the definitions of the abandoned property, are excellent. Thank you for taking obsolete language and actually improving it.
Councilmember Stevenson?
No questions, thank you.
Vice Mayor Butland?
I have no comments, thank you.
And I have no additional questions. I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt the ordinance number 10-2023, proposed amendments to the code, repeal the requirement for registration of abandoned property, and to add additional clarifications to Chapter 30, Article 10 of the code.
Second?
Vice Mayor Butland?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Papalardo?
Yes.
Councilmember Sell?
Yes.
And I am a yes. Under new business, the city manager and finance director are requesting the city council discuss.
Oh, to you again.
That was it.
Wait.
You got it.
And we got one more. We got
Oh, he's
the,
got one
Just
more.
an item, ma'am.
Oh,
Item
I'm
number
sorry, I missed number 3.
Yes,
You're
ma'am.
correct. The
was gonna
applicant, McKee Construction, would like to extend their final site plan development order for the Eagles Club project. This is agenda number
Yes.
3, under growth management and development.
Thank you. Once again, Stephen Bapp, Growth Management Director, City of DeBerry. This is for a development order extension for the Eagles Club. What is the Eagles Club and where is it? Well, it's located and addressed at 5 Cunningham Road. The project size is just under 1.5 acres. It consists of one structure and associated infrastructure for the Eagles Club. And the project meets all of our land development and building code requirements. Project location is located along Cunningham Road, south of High Banks, and just near the Enterprise Road is to the east of the project site. The project itself is pretty simple. It is a 4,900 square foot club building with associated parking, drainage, and other infrastructure. A development order. What is it? It's an order issued to a developer of building indicating that the city has approved the construction subject to appropriate city and other permits. How long is it good for? Our city code indicates that development orders are good for 360 days. And during that period, construction must have commenced. And if construction does not commence within that 360 days, the developer or builder may ask the city council within 3 months of that date for an extension of an additional 360 days, and that's what he is seeking tonight. The timeline, this was a longer project, primarily due to a change of scope and scale. There was a plan that came forward back in late 2018 that went through the process, but after the development order was issued, the applicant wanted to make a smaller scaled site, wanted to reduce the overall size of the property from like 5 acres to 1.5 acres and reduce the size of the building and other infrastructure. So the city staff worked with the applicant, worked through a lot split, issued a lot split, and then a new project moved forward. In your packet, it indicates that the development order was issued on 5 May 2023. That was a typo. It is 5 May 2022. But through the process, the development order was issued May of last year, went through our building department for their permits, submittal of the permits, and in this process, got kind of towards the end of the development timeline. So therefore, they requested a development order extension in late July of this year, which is within regulatory guidance of the LDC. Recently, last week, they held a pre-construction meeting with city staff, and they were prepared and ready to go and waiting for this last item of extending the development order to begin construction. So they have, in good faith, moved forward with the project, and in today's construction world, timelines are a bit fussy, but they're standing by. They've done appropriate staff coordination. They've done the final step. They just need this approval to continue with the project.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you have any, is the applicant here tonight?
I do not see the applicant.
Okay.
They were made aware of the meeting, but
Uh-huh. Do we have any public participation, City Clerk?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay. Councilmember Sell?
No comments.
Councilmember Papalardo?
Just a brief question. The applicant seems responsive based on the timeline you provided. They do seem to be taking an active attempt to bring this to fruition, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevenson?
So just to clarify, one of the main reasons for needing this extension is they decrease the size of the building and split the lot?
while they decreased the size of the building and split the lot, we got the lot size correct. We worked through that process. This time, they've taken about a year to get to this point. There were some delays in their construction schedule or acquisition of materials, and I believe they may have changed out a subcontractor or two, fell off the plate before they were able to move forward. When they attended the pre-construction meeting on the 16th of August, they had their full team there. They probably had, goodness, they had the construction manager, they had the general contractor, and they had their primary subcontractors there. So they had a pretty full staff. You know, it happens in this day and age in construction as people fall out for other projects.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Butland?
Just a real quick question, Stephen. I don't know if you can answer this tonight. The church is right behind it. Is there a restriction for, like, being near a school, being a social club? Or
No.
there's nothing? So,
There's no restriction in the, in this case.
Okay.
Would not apply.
okay. I was just curious. That's all I had.
And there is another, the distance would not apply. This rule would not apply in your
Okay.
case.
I just was curious, because I know they were talking to school at
Yeah.
the church. I want to make sure it doesn't conflict.
Yes, ma'am. That's good.
Yes. Okay, I have no additional questions.
Okay.
I would entertain a motion if there's no further discussion.
Make a motion to approve the extension request for the Eagles Club final site plan development order for the additional 360 days.
Second.
Vice Mayor Butland?
Yes.
Councilmember Stevenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Papalardo?
Yes.
Councilmember Sell?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Now we will move to new business. The city manager and finance director are requesting the city council discuss and provide guidance on the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023 to 2024. I would note for the public and the council that this is a discussion item. We are not expecting any motions or votes. At this point in the process, there will be additional hearings in September consistent with Florida statutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We're going to go through a little bit of review for those folks that are new to this particular process that wasn't here and didn't listen to this in July. So I'll just go over a little review and then go with some of the changes that we've made since we first proposed the budget on or about July 15th. So this is the process. We proposed the budget around July 15th. We did a proposed millage rate, and we proposed at 2.9247. And then tonight's the council meeting and budget workshop on August 23rd. On September the 6th is the tentative budget and millage hearing, and also on September the 20th is the final budget and final millage hearing as well. So obviously, I've been updating this particular
Favorite slide.
this slide, my favorite slide, and just for residents' sake is that if you decide outside residents to move from DeLand to the city of DeBary, you immediately save, and you build the same value house, you immediately save 57% in your ad valorem tax. If you move from Orange City or Deltona, you're saving 63% in your ad valorem tax. We're at 2.9247. DeLand is at 6.48. That's their proposed millage rate. Lake Helen 6.85. Deltona, their proposed is going to be 7.35, and Orange City is going to go down. And I'll give you some information. It looks like they're going to go down to 7.12. But given with the our stormwater rates and everything else, we're still 44% less than everybody else. And so living in DeBary does provide some financial savings for our residents. And I think it's certainly worth bragging about to our neighbors, which we do. We're the model of consistency for the last almost 9 years now. We've allocated 2.9247. Nobody runs government like a business like the city of DeBary. We have perfected the contract for services, which we brag about all the time. And our leadership and our unified vision is second to none, in my opinion. I think the city of DeBary, as I go around the county, has the highest trust and integrity with their constituents than any other government. And the other night, as I was at the Volusia County Council meeting during break time, I had an opportunity to let people know, let the Volusia County Council members know who are not familiar with DeBary that much, that since the last 30 years, we've actually only increased our millage rate 0.1 mil over the last 30 years, and they are just floored with that statistic. And so, but we make sure that they know that we are financially conservative and we're executing our business in a responsible manner. We talked about the proposed millage rate, keeping it the same as a 7.65% increase. You've heard my story regarding the rollback law, how it's obsolete. It does mislead the public. As you know, Save Our Homes is maxed out at 3%, and almost 80% of all the residents in DeBary are homesteaded. So that 7.65% increase is the overall revenue for the city. And as far as our residents concerned, if you are homesteaded and you're now under Save Our Homes, it is a 3% maximum. So 80% of our homes in DeBary are homesteaded. Only a little over 20% is not homesteaded. And so our over the right there, you can see the proposed rate of 2.9247, and it is a 7.65% increase in total revenue for the city. We had talked about our 4 major projects and our concerns about inflation and the construction industry, and it certainly adds to the budget a lot of complexity and uncertainty. The council has made it very clear that they want to do a do-now strategy, and so we are moving full force with our 4 major projects, which I'll outline here as well. This is some of the changes that we've made in our budget and bookkeeping changes. We added an engineering department. We added a special project funds, which is for the 3 projects, and then we eliminated the BTR department in our budget, which was basically statistically insignificant. And then just for our residents' sakes, we paid off the debt service for the fire station number 33. That was paid off on 12/1/2022. Our operational expenses on human resources, the CPI-U, is up 6.5%. The year before was 7.1%. Inflation was 4.8%, and the previous year was 6%. We're recommending in this budget an employee COLA of 4%. And I'll have some examples here of as well. And one of the also, as far as human resources, we're requesting 1 part-time employee to full-time. Fortunately or unfortunately, today I had a Volusia County Managers Association meeting, and we had an opportunity to talk with each other about what was the probable ad valorem rate that they were going to charge each city, and what was the probability of the employee increases. And you can see DeLand, just running down real quick, DeLand is looking at reducing theirs by 0.1 with partial rollback. New Smyrna Beach is definitely doing a rate increase of almost a $500,000. And even though they publish, a lot of these cities, they publish an ad valorem rate, they don't include their debt ad valorem. And some of these cities have an additional debt ad valorem that they don't advertise. But New Smyrna Beach is doing a rate increase with employee increase of 3%. Daytona Beach is keeping their rate the same. They do have a debt ad valorem as well. But their employees is 3% in October and 2% in April. Ormond Beach is also increasing their rate up to 4.06. They also have a debt service they don't advertise. And they're requesting 3% for their employees. Orange City is dropping from 7.69. Their city manager said they will probably do 7.1209, which is a rollback. And they're looking at 3% for non-union, 4% for union. Daytona Beach Shores dropping, partial rollback. They have a merit system which is not very good, but they still use it. And then they're going to, on their public safety, on top of that, they're going to add public safety at another 4%. We're proposing DeBerry to stay the same rate and with the employees of 4%. Holly Hill, same rate, $2 for their per hour for their employees plus 1 to 4% on top. Ponce Inlet is doing a significant rate increase. I believe they did a rollback last year. They found themselves, as manager said, they found themselves in trouble. And so they're doing a rate increase, and then the employees is $1 an hour. Deltona is actually going to reduce down to 7.35, partial rollback. For the employees, 3% in October, 2% in April. Volusia County's rate's going to stay the same, 5% for the employees. Port Orange's rate increase is going up on their rate increase, 5% for employees. South Daytona is the same rate, 5% for employees. And Edgewater, they weren't there today, but it appears they're going to keep their rate the same, but they're going for 6% for their employees. And then Lake Helen, Pearson, and Oak Hill were not there today. So law enforcement, same as contract pricing as last year. We signed a 2-year contract last year, and it's at $3.944 million. We are adding 3 flock license plate readers, which are needed to be proactive in our pursuit of fighting crime and deter it. Fire services, the contract pricing is $2.159 million. And then, as I said, Orange City is hoping for a 4% union increase, and so we can probably anticipate the salaries for our firefighters. So it's $2.159 million plus probably 4% for our fire personnel salaries. That $2.159 million includes the fire inspector and vehicle. As you recall, a couple of meetings ago, we passed a budget amendment for the new fire station personnel, which provides language in there to transfer for the new fire station. And the Orange City Fire Department also applied for a grant which could possibly pay up for all personnel up to 3 years, which we are very excited about and crossing our fingers to get. Regarding the budget, the city manager's budget is very similar to last year, and some folks had some questions about which personnel were under the city manager. It's the HR director, the city clerk, the economic development, government affairs, and communications department. Our general government is very similar to the previous year. Our information technology is adding 1 person from part-time to full-time, and we'll be implementing some cybersecurity from a grant that we got from the state of Florida, which the council approved earlier this summer, the award. And then finance, similar to previous year, we were looking at the possibility of doing some software there, and we have decided to postpone that. Public Works, we reduced the road resurfacing primarily because of some of our major projects that we have. And then the bucket truck is 10 years old, and the lift is no longer certifiable, and we need a new bucket truck to continue all of our work there. Public Works, I just want to let you know, we're working on a project that may affect the budget mid-year. As you know, as I disclosed, we're in negotiations with the county to exchange the maintenance for the Sunrail station for the 98 acres across the street. We're currently working on a recreation plan for that particular area, and also working on Again, it's a very passive recreation plan for trails and some pavilions and open space. And it, working with also the St. John's Water Management District, that has to be approved by the St. John's Water Management District. And there will be, if this all goes as planned, the best way to go in maintaining the Sunrail station is to provide one FTE and maybe a pressure washing company, because it seems to be a very extensive endeavor. The Parks and Recreation, we're looking for a pavilion of the for our CDBG money, the Keller Dog Park, the Kubota Tractor, the Gator, and the Keller Concession remodel. Keller Concession is in deplorable shape, just almost as bad as Sullivan Park when we moved that trailer. I'm surprised we got the trailer out on Sullivan Park. And then our four major projects: the Fort Florida Road reconstruction from the railroad to Barwick, which is estimated, we budgeted $2.5 million. The Fort Florida Bridge, which is our partnership with FP&L and the state of Florida, is $2 million. The fire station, $5.15 million, and Alexander Island, which is $4.3 million. So the Fort Florida Road reconstruction, as you know, we've been planning for this for the last couple of years, just in case we didn't get the state appropriation. As you know, the governor vetoed our appropriation, even though it was approved by the legislature. The governor did veto it, so we were prepared for that. We hadn't done resurfacing in a couple years, so we took the gas tax, saved the gas tax funds in reserves, and moved it to this project fund. The mobility fees, same thing. We've been saving those, obviously. The franchise fee reserve, same thing. And we do have some general fund reserves from resurfacing last year that we did not spend, and then a little bit of ARPA funds to balance out at $2.5 million. But this is just an example of our ability to foresee the future and to plan financially for these particular projects. If we would have got the appropriation, then we would use some of this money for something else, but unfortunately it didn't happen. The Fort Florida Bridge, gosh, we've been working on 4 years for this, and we've got almost a final draft with FP&L to sign a contract with them. We're working on the contract with St. John's Water Management District for the legislative appropriation, and you know, this is going to come to fruition after all the hard work with fighting with FP&L and fighting with FDEP. So look like this will come to fruition. The first year we'll be looking at $500,000 for the engineering, and then probably the construction after that, the following year. The fire station, we received a legislative grant, and we matched it with our money, so we got $2.5 million towards that, and we decided, depending on with the uncertainty of construction, we budgeted some ARPA money to round out what we think. Our first round of bids, the RFP came in at a little bit of $5.2 million. The bids did come in, the RFQ, the CMAR contract, we did get two bidders. So Wharton Smith and McCree Design, I have to tell you, they're probably the best companies that do CMAR contracts, and we're very fortunate they want to come do business in the state of Florida. In our advertisement, we had put a budget of $4 million, and they applied. And so generally how this will work, we got another round of interviews with each one of them. They will disclose their fees and everything else, and then we'll work on a maximum contract price, guaranteed maximum price. And so we're hoping to come under budget and come get this project done timely. Stay tuned to that. I'm feeling a lot more confident on this project. Then Alexander Island, as we explained, that we're actually going to be putting up $1.8 million, $1.875 million. That came from the match. That came from the funds from the closing of the Mosaic property. As we explained, financially, the city will be basically doubling its money with the Main Street project, and we're rolling it over to double our money again. It's just the way that you can work your finances to take advantage and reduce the burden of your residents. The land match is $625,000. That will, the exceptional grant from $2.5 million from the county, and so the project construction is $4.375 million. That should put a pretty good dent into phase one of what you saw tonight from the concept plan. We made a request, obviously, some of our projects, and this is a simplified version of the Gantt chart. It kind of provides the timelines of the Berry Fire Station, the Fort Florida Road reconstruction, the Fort Florida Bridge, and also Alexander Island. And obviously trying to, unfortunately, there's going to be some road closures on Fort Florida Road. I can't prevent that. But we're looking at, with the DeBerry Fire Station, hopefully that we can get to contract by December 2023. Mobilization, which is usually 60 to 90 days, and then construction sometime March 2024 to December 2024. So the bid for the fire station requires about 6 months of construction, but I put a little extra time in there for construction. The Fort Florida Road reconstruction with plans and permits, we're hoping to get that done by November of 2023. The bid's going out, obviously mobility. And then we met with Dean Barbary this week, and he believes the construction will start January 2024 and will take about 6 months to get that project done. And that's between Barwick and the railroad tracks.
That's not a 6-month complete closure, is it?
That is a full 6-month complete closure.
Complete closure.
Yes, it is.
And then we get a 4-month break before we're closed for the bridge reconstruction.
Correct. And
Oh, joy.
and so obviously the Fort Florida Bridge, hopefully getting through engineering and St. John's Water Management District permit by July 2024. Mobilization and the bid process and mobilization and starting construction sometime in November 2024, and can be completed by July 2025. Then Alexander Island, I'm sure that you're interested in this. Obviously, the ECHO application, we apply in September or October. We expect, even though they say February 2024, we expect the ECHO award in March 2024. And they'll be, Kimley Horn will be engineering and permitting the entrance during this time frame while we wait for go through the ECHO process. And then working on phase one, and because we'll delay some of the, we can start with obviously the entrance and everything else, and closing the road at the same time we close the bridge road, so this way prevent some duplication.
Well, it looks to me like you're doing the construction of the entrance
At the
during
same time, we got
3 of the 4 months we have a break.
No, the construction is actually starting when the bridge starts.
Okay, as I was looking at construction, entrance, and parking, bids, I didn't see
Yeah, there's
bids.
bids.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, you could bid it without.
So we're trying to
closing.
match that as much as possible, and we'll see as we get a little close. Again, these are our guesstimates, and
Right.
just give you an indication of when these projects will start.
Okay.
Is there any way that the Fort Florida Road construction could have half the time where there's 1 lane through there?
Is that you?
I mean,
Mayor,
6
I'm
months.
gonna- I'm going to say no.
6 months.
Yeah.
That's right. You can go far away.
Oh, yeah, I'm aware. There's no traffic light at Barwick, so if you want to turn left, you're out of luck.
The Fort Florida Road will be completely tore up. It's going to be raised 2 to 3 feet. And so having
Where?
from Barwick to railroad track, yeah.
It's very low.
Yeah, and so I say 2 to 3 feet, and there's retaining walls that have to be built in certain areas, and so it's just that road is going to be, there's just no way unless you've got a tank to be able to get through there.
Okay.
So what are we going to do for left turns?
We've been talking about that, and
There's
maybe
such a thing as a temporary light?
I was going to say.
there is a temporary signal. That's something that we've been talking about. Now, we've got a little bit of time here. Certainly, we can stage a deputy down there to manage traffic
Every
during peak
morning?
hours. Yeah, so,
This morning at 8:10, there were 6 of us waiting at the light to turn left back to the tracks.
On Barwick.
No,
Oh,
on
on
Fort
Fort
Florida.
Florida.
But see, if we turn right on Barwick and then there's no left turn signal,
Right.
then that's a longer line with no ability to get across safely. Okay.
we've thought about that.
If
and
you
we're
would do some
working it.
additional work on that would be
We've
great.
thought about it, and we've been planning on some of those things.
Good.
Get on it, right? Since you're in the house, get on it.
So now we come to the changes, since we proposed our proposed budget. As you see there, the top group there, those are revenue-related. We got some information from the Department of Revenue. The revenue estimates are a little bit more conservative than they were in previous years, and then I'm assuming that they're anticipating some type of slowdown, and so in purchases and everything else. So some of the revenues are a little less, and so we made various adjustments that as well. The next one is obviously the general government insurance and workman's comp insurance, and I was at the Volusia County Managers Association, and some of the cities today indicated that their insurance went up 50 to 100%. Our staff, Wendy Cullen and Liz Bauer, did a yeoman's job on working with our insurance companies, not only for property casualty and workman's comp. And as you can see there, workman's comp actually went down. We're doing so well safety-wise that our record is pretty impeccable. And they negotiated a reduction in our workman's comp, which is unheard of. Some of the other city managers are talking about 50 to 75% increase on workman's comp. And then our property insurance, it did go up slightly, but not to the degree of some of my colleagues and some of the other cities. Just a yeoman's job. I can't thank them enough for the outstanding work they've done on that. And so on the public works, machinery and equipment, we did remove the truck off the F-250 off the capital list. We made that a particular adjustment. We made some minor adjustments to the city council. We took Team Volusia out. Team Volusia price went up to $14,000, which the council approved, and so we made that adjustment in the budget. Fire contract services went up slightly by $31,000. The operating supplies, we did remove the Volusia League of Cities dinner, which was in last year's budget, is still left in there, so we took that out. And then we did add $30,000 for anniversary event if the council shall decide if they want that between now and the end of the year. For finance, obviously, we removed this new software. The Parks and Recreation machinery, we did remove the trailer there. We did transfer some money out of the Florida Road Improvement, and we did make some adjustments to make sure that we move some money around so that the general fund balances appropriately. And then obviously with fire, we reduced by $48,000. The cardiac monitor could be postponed to next year, and that's what we moved it to next year's budget. So the workman's comp, again, we made some various adjustments. We transferred some money out to the general fund by adjusting $28,000 to make sure that balances. And the new local option gas tax, we adjusted those to make sure those balances as well. And so it's been a yeoman's job by Liz Bauer and her team to, with all these adjustments and getting to the new updated budget there. They did a great job on being able to balance our budget and maintain our cash reserves exactly the same as it was the previous year. And Mayor, that's all I have, and Ms. Bauer and I are here for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Sell, do you have questions, comments?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example of two different strategies. So last year, Deltona had 300 homes flood in 2022. In 2023, they're going to go to partial rollback. That's how they're going to fix their flooding. They have the packed house every week now. Our strategy was, and I will tell you and I will admit that I stood at that podium, gave you all hell at the time, that one, you're going to raise taxes and never look back, which you promised.
We promised we wouldn't, and we did.
You kept that promise.
Yeah.
But we had people in here complaining about flooding all the time. So you bit the bullet, you raised the millage rate,
Yep.
you fixed the flooding. In 2022, we had one home flood. And honestly, that was due to a clogged drain that may or may not have been preventable, unless somebody we had on guard at that drain to just monitor it. Today, we had 3 residents show up at our meeting. 1, we bored to death and he went home early. 2, one's my wife. So thank you for sticking around and listening to our meeting. I can't believe I'm saying all this, but a lot of the money we're spending this next year is due to growth. And I wish I could stop it all. I really could. But there are occasions where you just can't stop it. I do believe the downtown area will be a hit with a lot of residents. I'm doing this tonight because of Alexander Island. I made a promise that we were going to milk Echo for everything we put down there at Alexander Island. This budget keeps that promise. And I will tell you right up, this budget is not only creative, but it's smart. And again, Jim had to feel my forehead last meeting, make sure I wasn't sick. I don't know what Jim's going to put in his slideshow, but I'm going to tell you that I see something at the end of the rainbow here. And I know it needs to be done. We're going to build a firehouse because of growth, and we have to equip said firehouse with fancy fire engines and more employees to man that firehouse. I don't know how you stop that. It has to be done. Keeping our millage rate what it was this time last year, I actually think there's some risk involved for Carmen, which city managers never like risk. Usually every year we'll keep the same millage rate and we'll keep padding our reserves. This year, with the way things are with pricing, we may not get to that point where we stockpile up money into our reserves. It might be close, actually. This is the kind of budget that I would love to see year over year. I see a return on investment. I really think that downtown and the park, there's something for everybody in this city there. And my hat's off to Carmen for doing an amazing job, and Liz, and crunching numbers. And I can't wait till this time in 2024 where I start to see some things happen. That's all I got to say.
Councilmember Papalardo?
Thank you. Well, we can do that. Can I ask a couple questions first really quick? Number one, those in the neighboring cities, the flat $1 and $2 increases, are those due to trying to catch up to the minimum wage law? Probably. That's what it looks like.
A number of different reasons. They have compression issues.
Wage compression.
And so what happens is that your lower end employees get a higher percentage than your higher employees. So.
And then kind of attacking onto that, we don't have anyone at risk of falling below the $15 minimum wage law, right? Because we fixed that a year or two ago.
We did. We did that ahead of time.
Just wanted to check.
We did that, and we're proactive, and that's
Good.
some of the reasons why we don't have a whole lot of turnover, and we only got 46 employees, and all of them were spectacular. So.
Excellent. And then thank you for that Gantt chart. That was very helpful. picturing cash flow, that was my biggest concern going into this year. There's a lot of capital strain. And seeing that, I had a suspicion that some projects may straddle fiscal years. So that should alleviate some of those concerns I had and some of that capital strain we may feel. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little heads up. Next year, some of our legislative requests are going to be pretty large.
Good. Make them bigger.
And we may have some cash flow problems if we get those. And so we may have to shake some money around. We may have to temporarily borrow some money to handle the cash flow, because these projects they're going to be huge. One of the legislative issues, obviously, we're going to ask for is Benson Junction. That's a $5 million project.
Okay.
And then we're also going to ask for putting power lines underground, which is a $6 million project. And with the state, you have to float those, and then you get reimbursed. And so we'll do some cash management next year, but I'll just give you a heads up, because these projects are getting bigger, and we're getting more aggressive to go get them. One of the things I might have missed on the changes is the lobbyist firm. I'll be bringing that September the 6th. We've gone through the entire process. We are going to recommend a lobbying firm for us, and the dollars this lobbyist firm is impressive. And they match up to exactly the way we are heading forward the next 2 to 3 years. And so we're expecting big things. So
Great. So I'll hop into this. So every year I like to put together some slides around tax time, because it's something I weigh very seriously, and it's something I feel I have a little bit of professional expertise in as far as budgeting and considering some financial analysis. So if we can go to the first slide. Here's a public service announcement to cap it off, or to start it off. Minimize your taxes without having rollback. File for your homestead property tax exemption. Keep your property value assessment low. It caps annual growth at 3%. This will save you tens of thousands of dollars over your home owning life. In fact, and this graph is a great explanation of what we're going to feel this year, 95% of our run rate homes, which I'm defining as homes that did not have a meaningful improvement, were not built from zero recently, they're not a new build, and there wasn't some type of great improvement involved with it, they're going to have a net tax reduction when we consider maintaining the reduction in stormwater fees. Under $12 a year, or your increases will be less than $12 a year if your home market value is less than $600,000. Under $2 a month if your home market value is under $800,000. You actually have a net tax reduction based on my math here if your home value is less than $416,000. So I think there's a great emphasis that we've been putting into place here, that this council, I think we've done a good job in balancing different parts of the tax bill as well as maintaining our ad valorem. Next slide, please. Oh, we missed one.
I might have missed this one.
That's okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So reading your ad valorem. So this is actually my tax bill from last year. I got my trim yesterday, so I didn't have a chance to update it. If you look at the little pie chart, it's really interesting. DeBerry makes about 18% of most, mine at least, tax bills. Most of it goes to the county. I just think that's really good to know about, because when you see your tax bill and maybe it's $3,000 or $4,000, it's not all coming to us. It's about 1/5 of your entire tax bill. I think that's important to keep in mind when you write that check. Next, please. All right, interpreting media headlines. So DeBerry is not immune to these types of headlines. Town appears to raise property taxes, and then right within the text of the article, they say, oh, it's the same millage. The city council didn't do anything. Property appraiser raised your values. That's where the change is happening. So similarly, the land to advertise a tax increase, but they admit that the millage rate is actually lower than the previous year. So some interesting things that we kind of compete with to maintain a certain narrative that is just hard to compete with. Next slide, please. So flat year-over-year millage is the free market at work. I believe this very strongly. CPI versus the homestead tax change. When municipal tax agencies maintain the same millage year over year, they allow the free market via the property appraiser to set the value of property and thus tax revenues. If you look at this chart here, I think that's orange. That's inflation the past 3 years. The blue line is the maximum homestead property tax value change, 3%. And then run rate on homes, which is what DeBerry has experienced on those run rate definition of homes. We are much better than inflation. So in the definition of real being the gross change less inflation, you have a real tax reduction based on economic macro incentives and impacts. So by using flat millage as a limitation to spending, cities are allocated real cost of living changes, so it's more reflexive with the realities of the macro economy. With these limitations, DeBerry is able to pay salary demands to law enforcement, fire services, staff, and other inflation-sensitive services. When cities can save into the reserves, which we have done for the past number of years, padding those reserves with keeping our millage flat, it lets us use cash for projects instead of debt. And I think that's an extremely important principle that we maintain, and something that I intend to enforce as best as I possibly can, is that we use cash first always, because debt is dangerous for municipalities because it runs away very quickly. We have a neighboring municipality that is experiencing some of those pressures, and I really don't want to see DeBerry go down that path. Next slide, please. I'm going to be brief here. 2018, I call it a failed rollback. It actually, for those 2 years of the rollback year and the following year, we could have wound up in the same place fiscally based on the usage of cash reserves, and it ended up costing the median homeowner about $34 extra, and if we just kept it flat. So the median meaning half of our residents paid more than $35, more than they should have, and half less. So basically, we like to accuse Congress of robbing from future generations. We did just that, but we stole from ourselves 1 year in advance. Next slide, please. Who benefits from rollback? This is from our 22 audit. And this is called a tax risk analysis here, kind of the weighting of property taxes by the 5 most valuable properties in town. So 5 entities benefit in 2022, 46.5% of any rollback proposal. This year, based on some simplified data that I tried to put together, 5 entities would get half of the rollback benefit. This is just kind of one of the difficulties DeBerry has with its mix of properties that we need to weigh when we consider rollback, because who's actually benefiting? That means that 9,000 or 8,800 homes fight over only half of the entire rollback benefit. And I think that is one of the most concise concerns we need to think about if we consider rollback actually benefiting our residents. I don't know if that's the last slide, I can't remember. Oh, okay. A bridge. Bridges are great graphs. I like these analyses. Bridging year-over-year tax basis growth. So when you see the headline, DeBerry taxes go up 7.8%, I forget what it is this year. That's looking at the tax assessment value given the same flat millage. What I've broken down here is a bridge so you have our 22 tax basis, we end with the 23 tax basis. The branches in between there show the brand new home improvement values, tacking on the sales of existing homes or improvements to existing homes, and then our run rate parcels. That's 95% of homes make up 1.5% of our year-over-year tax increase. Again, another very important, concise consideration when 95% of homes, because they haven't had any meaningful changes, they benefit from homestead. We have things that are offsetting these differences in assessments, that this is very much trying our best to minimize the impact of inflation on our residents. That, yes, there is some minor tax implication there, but it's much, much less than any implication from media headlines. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in consideration. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you. Overall, I really like this budget. We did go from focusing so much on stormwater. It's interesting not to see any major stormwater projects in this budget, correct?
Under the Stormwater Fund, we have a couple possible land purchases, and we have one big project, which is the lift station at James Pond.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are, it's just in a separate fund.
Gotcha.
Project.
All right. As far as you had sent us an email about the Volusia County considering the rollback on Echo and then also a change to the communication service tax. Do you have an update for us since they had that
Oh,
meeting?
yeah.
Oh, yes, we do. And kudos to the city of DeLand and the city of DeBerry for going up and protecting
All
the
of Volusia, all
of
16
Volusia because the other cities didn't show up. And we got, I'm going to pass on from the managers, a lot of congratulations and thank you from Volusia County. County manager and the assistant county manager, they really appreciated DeLand and DeBerry protecting some of our interests. They had 4 items up for consideration. One was the gas tax and try to reduce the gas tax. And we made a very clear presentation that in gas tax, it's the retailer that pays the tax to the distributor. It's not like sales tax. And so when you reduce gas tax, you reduce the amount the retailer pays the distributor. And so the savings never get to the resident. And so it's very important for them to understand how the industry operates and how the tax is applied. Not only did the mayor and I and Mr. Sell make presentation, I also sent an email the following day to further explain how the gas tax industry works. And so I think they fully understand now that reduction of the gas tax has no benefit to the residents. It will be a retailer windfall, and they'll stick the money in their own pocket.
Gotcha.
The Echo, obviously, they were a little frustrated, as I've spoken to some privately, they were a little frustrated that the reserves were so high. We made a recommendation to reduce some of the match to encourage more participation in the program. But I think they finally realized that there's some exceptional grants coming us.
Right, that was not in their figures.
No.
So it could reduce the reserves by 1/3 in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting with ECHO, that the referendum, the voting referendum, it was for up to 2.0 mils, and so they do have a right to adjust.
0.2.
0.2, I'm sorry, 0.2 mils. And so they did have a right to adjust if necessary. They decided to keep the same rate for ECHO. Communication services tax, it was for their own unincorporated area, and they decided to eliminate it. Now, they do have an ordinance coming up on August the 30th to solidify that and to notify, they need that in order to notify the Florida Department of Revenue. And then the BTR, they eliminated.
And on those 2 issues, there were no people that I saw providing comment to encourage them not to touch them.
No.
We did not take BT, even though it affects us to a minor degree. You pick your battles, and we picked the really big ones. And the communications tax, to me, if I had any skin in the game, I think it's foolhardy, but I don't have any skin in the game. It's for the unincorporated parts of Volusia.
Gotcha.
And that was a $3 million.
It's $3 million reduction in their budget. Nobody was there to champion it.
But it doesn't affect us.
It doesn't
Okay.
affect us. So there were 4 taxation issues, and we took on the 2 that were the most
Good.
critical for us and every other municipality in the county. And we prevailed. Our position prevailed, and the other presenter was DeLand through Mayor Cloudman. Councilmember Sell, I spoke on both issues. Carmen spoke on both ECHO and the gas tax. And my sense was that if we weren't there 5 hours in, right in front of them, that they would have done what they did with the other issues. Nobody's there. And I have mentioned this to the rest of the mayors, and the response is that we are going to set up a system within the mayor group where there will be a facility to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And it will happen in coordination with the League of Cities, which advises the mayor's group. But the next day or so, I spent some time thinking, and I realized how close we all came to losing For us, it was around 250,000 on the gas tax to no point. And a half of if the Echo receipts had been half of what we felt was established, what the people expect, it may have said up to in the resolution, but I don't think anybody who read it saw anything other than the math, the number .2, which was implemented immediately upon the reauthorization of the program. And I think we came very close to losing those two issues had we not put 5 hours in, and Carmen 7 hours. He stayed to the duration of the gas tax. And DeLand was the only other voice.
Well, thank you very much for standing up for that. When you sent the email, and then I didn't hear anything about it in the budget, I was like, well, so are we losing that money or not? But it sounds like we're not losing those funds, the ECHO funds.
And neither is Deltona losing $1 million, and neither is
Correct.
Daytona losing 800,000. I mean, there was real money at stake here.
And it's important to our budget. I mean, $5 million almost, it looked like, of our budget is the grants and the taxes and things like that, these extra, not just our local property taxes, but the intergovernmental
Right.
funds. And so thank you again for helping to save that for us. And I don't have any other questions at this time.
Vice Mayor Butlin.
I don't have much to say on the budget. I think we're in the right direction. A lot of it's been said already, so I'm not going to repeat. I'm hoping that in the future we can be a little bit more reactive instead of proactive in our code enforcement. I'm seeing more and more issues coming up that unless someone calls it in and complains, and they don't want to do it because it's not anonymous anymore. So they're calling me and saying, what are we doing about this? Well, I can't do anything, call and complain. And then we'll react to it. Well, why can't you don't you see it? And I'm like, yes, but we're not reactive, we're proactive. So I would like to see something in the future that maybe we can be a little bit more reactive, maybe on the business side. I don't know how to do that. So it's something to talk about maybe next year. I know it's not going to happen this year in this budget, but it's something to consider in the future. That's what I've been hearing a lot of on my end. So that's really the only thing I had other than different than what anyone else has said already. So thank you for your presentation, Jim. It was nice to see that. Thank you, staff, for doing all this and getting your budgets together and getting all these numbers, because it drives me crazy.
Quick
And I'm a
question.
numbers person.
Sorry,
Yes.
just to clarify, we do have reactive code enforcement. And I think what you're trying to say is you would like it to be more proactive?
Yes.
That's a
Okay.
discussion for another
That's a
night.
whole nother day.
It is, that's
something
fine,
for the
but
future.
I would agree with you. I've brought that up in the past
Yeah,
as well.
so. just
There's a
something to look-
diversity of opinion on the council, it's safe to say. It's
I
a
understand.
discussion for some other day.
Yeah.
Congratulations to everyone that has worked so hard on this budget. Thank you for the changes that you've made in response to everything that has changed in the last month, the adjustment of state revenue projections and finding the ways to make that work within the budget. I do think that this is an extraordinary year for us, as Councilmember Sell has mentioned, where we have 4 very large projects that we now will see come to fruition by using the monies that we've husbanded and stacked away as we could while we were still building our reserves, so that we can pull these off now that they are queued up to become reality. And I feel very good about the entire budget. I also do want to give kudos to Wendy Cullen, who is not here tonight, about her work on the insurance. To get a rollback on the workman's comp is almost unheard of. And she was quite tickled with achieving it. She told me about it, and justifiably so. This is not the experience that is being seen in the other municipalities. And so it's one more way that DeBary distinguishes itself by being extremely fiscally conservative and managing within the assets we have, saving cash where we can, and then using it to cover rather than borrowing from tomorrow. So I'm very pleased with the budget and appreciative of all the effort that's gone into it. Unless there are further comments, we will move on to member reports. Councilmember Sell, anything to report?
Yeah, I would like to say Friday night, my wife and I went out, and a couple other folks from DeBerry with us, and supported Jim throwing out the first pitch. I think that went well. Also, I did want to touch on actually going to the county council meeting and voicing my disappointment in other cities, many other cities. I think 14 of them that didn't bother to show up to speak about the gas tax or ECHO. I mean, ECHO is something that I hope is in our toolbox for the remainder of the next 20 years. I think we have staff that gets creative and is able to use the ECHO funds to our advantage. Again, I think it's going to help build our park up. That's my hope anyway. I do want to thank Carmen for staying there.
7.
Yeah, I don't want to. We may have stayed there 5, but I
We
think
were
they
there
broke
5.
for
I
lunch.
think he was there 7 or 8.
Yeah, then they broke for lunch, I think.
Yes, and he was there through
And
the,
Carmen,
At 9 o'clock at night, yeah.
Carmen,
yes. Then they came back at 9 whatever,
Yeah.
and then they did gas tax, and he stayed till the end of that.
I don't think I saw any other city managers there.
Michael Ployce was there for
Yeah.
DeLand through the time that we spoke.
Yeah.
And the break for dinner. And Michael Ployce, to his credit, the DeLand city manager, also had made sure that every single municipality knew about these agenda items.
Also, it's my understanding that maybe Sherry Simmons was the one that caught this on the agenda and kind of
No.
alerted
Well,
us.
she had caught it, but Michael Plus at the same
Michael
time
did,
found it.
yeah.
And an email was sent to all city managers.
Yeah.
Kudos to them for catching this.
And then that's what caused me to send the email to you to explain what was going on, just in case you had any conversations with Volusia County or wanted to have any conversations with any Volusia County council members.
And lastly, man, can we get an update on some of these abandoned buildings and construction sites that they've torn up and they just
Echo Homes?
no, not Echo Homes. No, like the Bank of America. It's been in the
Oh.
cocoon stage for like 4 years now.
Well, I'll give you an update real quick. I mean, they had to do their re-engineering plans simply because the permit expired. They've had a very difficult time of finding a general contractor. They've actually got a poor history of working with general contractors. I think they're on about their 5th one. They've been through code enforcement. They paid $13,000 in fines. They supposedly have another general contractor. They did get all their plans re-engineered because the building codes changed since their project started. So they did all the re-engineering plans. They submitted them, got a building permit. They supposedly have a general contractor. But I understand there's some turmoil right now between them and this new general contractor. And so unfortunately, their permit will go now. I think they're in month number 3 from the permit that they issued. Once it expires, then we'll put them back into code enforcement again. Because simply I believe they're just having trouble between maintaining. Now they've got a reputation that whatever general contractor works with them is just not going to be successful.
Dirksen has 3 homes. 2 of them are half-built.
Echo Homes, that's what I
Echo
was
homes.
telling you.
Okay, and then the
ECO.
one that was damaged by the fire, nothing going on with that. I know
That's
some
an
of the-
estate now.
Yeah, we're working, I mean, some of those things are insurance related, and they're very difficult. We had an issue in Highlands Park with a trailer that was there. It was not livable. The building department condemned it. Reason why you didn't see it, because the price tag to remove that mobile home that was destroyed was only $3,000, so we just took care of that. We noticed them properly, and so we took that property that was not livable and we tore it down. So that you didn't see that because I had the authority to do that. So
Also, I've been fielding a few calls from residents more now and seeing it on social media as well as speeding. It's getting to the point now where some of the residents are actually hoping or pulling for some kind of speeding device like a hump or speed bumps or something on some of these roads that we have.
The problem with speed bumps is you can't afford it. Because once you put one in, you're going to be putting 1,000 in. Again, and there are safety issues and liability issues that go along with that. They did a 4-hour sting this last weekend or week before, 91 tickets. So, I mean, there are continuing, and they're still writing tickets. We're slowly changing behavior. It's just going to take time for everybody to understand that you don't speed in DeBary. And so it's a continuing effort. We met with the new captain. One of the first initiatives was we got to stay on the speeding thing. We got to change people's behavior. That's one of the things we're working on to try to change behavior.
That's all I got.
Councilmember Papalardo.
Last Friday, I was invited to throw out the first pitch at DeBary night at the Daytona Tortugas. I missed low and outside.
Oh, well.
You had good form, though. It looked great.
Yeah, you did look great.
Yeah, it had just stormed. I was afraid it was going to pour, but
Yeah.
I slipped out there. But it was a good time. What a cool little historic ballpark. That is so
Yeah.
fun, so beachy. So kind of on the tone of speeding enforcement, can we enhance enforcement explore enhancing enforcement on standing on the shoulder ahead of school release on Donald E. Smith? It's the cars are stacking on the shoulder. I know that's prohibited. I think we're getting to the point where enforcement might become necessary.
Yeah, it's
Something's working already.
Good.
we already got that working. We
It's
ordered some
working.
signs, no parking or standing. So we're going to put those down Donald Smith.
Thank you.
And really, the sheriff can't do anything until I get those signs up. And so we're going to have to tolerate it for another
Understood.
week or two.
The sheriff can get the ones that are actually at the end of the line park in the road.
Yes, true.
We don't have
Yeah.
parking in the one lane that goes
Yeah.
south on Donald E.
It's just a
Smith.
prime example that once the word gets out that there's a little loophole, they're going to take advantage of, and we just go back and close those loopholes.
Yeah, because there's starting to be lots of horn usage. There are people that stack in the turning lane, which is maybe okay, but they're in park and they're starting to put their sunshades up. So there's just zero intent of actually operating their vehicle, but they're on the road. So there's some inappropriate behavior, and I think enforcement is about to be necessary. And I'm sure you have it under control, but
Well,
it's something I want to relay.
Well, we don't have it under control.
Well, okay.
We're getting this-
You have a
but
yeah.
it's just
A plan.
that they found an area that they
Of
can
course.
maybe pick up their child 1 minute earlier.
Yeah.
So they're coming in 2 hours early.
And I keep
Yeah.
telling folks.
I know, it's crazy.
I keep telling folks all the time, some people are there for a couple hours waiting in line. The bell rings at 2 o'clock. If they would just come at 2:15 to pick up their child, takes them 2 minutes.
Yep.
And so,
Or at least stack in the beautiful new turning lane we've
Yeah,
built.
yeah.
Like, please.
yeah, I know, but unfortunately, that loophole exists and they're going to take advantage of it, and so we'll close it.
Well, I'm glad there's a plan. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you. Glad to see High Banks fully opened and operational. I think that that really went well according to plans. Everybody seems to be following the new traffic pattern, and the flow onto Shell, on and off Shell, seems to be really nice. So thanks again for how you guys managed that and managed to get it done before school started. I'm sure everybody appreciates that. I did have a question. It was under the council section of the budget, as far as if council directed about a 30th anniversary. So I don't know, when were we going to talk about that, or did you have ideas for that?
It's a future council meeting, and there are some ideas that have been scoped out.
Yeah.
And
so
there will be a presentation by the people who've been working on it.
Yeah, we're not trying to keep it a surprise. It's just there's a lot of workings on it and what's best for, and how many events that we can have, with the staff that we have. And so so we're working on a couple things, but we haven't matured it enough to bring it to council yet.
Okay, thank you. The only thing I would say is, I wish we had done that during 4th of July celebration and comboed it the way we tried to with the 25th anniversary a few
Well-
years ago.
Actually, the anniversary is the end of December, so
Yeah.
Okay,
it won't be 30 years till the end of December.
gotcha.
Yeah.
All
All
right,
right.
thank you. No other comments.
Vice Mayor Butland?
Yes, quite a few things, I'm sorry. I attended the Florida League of Cities Conference 2 weeks ago now, and it was funny because if you saw pictures, I wore a sash that said
Yes,
City of
it
DeBary.
said City of DeBary.
And it was our ribbon cutting sash. And from the time I got up to the booth and registered,
She
everyone
was
was
our
like,
pageant
oh my
girl.
God. But everyone was like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Why isn't every city doing that? And that was from the league itself. And wearing that, everywhere I sat, people came up to me and said, what's going on in the City of DeBarry? So I was able
Those
to.
poor people.
Those poor people heard it. 57%, 2.924, all my numbers were coming out. And then I get people like Wharton Smith, who every time they saw me came and stood next to me and asked me more questions about DeBarry, and so it was great to be there. So I'm glad I was there, and I'm glad I got to share some people. It's pretty scary when you hear from other cities on how bad their budgets are and what their rates are, and holy cow, it was pretty impressive to hear that. So I'm glad that we're in a position that we're in. It was great to tell people that we are the safest city. You don't want to live anywhere else in Volusia other than DeBarry because of the tax, all that stuff. I spilled it out. If it changes, I don't know what I'm going to talk about next time. I have to refresh my memory of all the numbers. But, so I did that, and that was great. I also attended the Q breakfast with the Volusia County Economic Development. It was about Career Source, talking about the value of the careers and stuff that's going on in Volusia County, and the numbers are up. And a lot of people didn't understand why the unemployment rate was so low. Well, it's only based on the people that apply for unemployment. If you're not applying, you're not in those numbers. So she had to explain that, and I was like, really? You people don't get this? It was like, oh my God. So it was also great to see Jim at the Tortugas, and we stayed there. My daughter and her boyfriend came, and he's a big ball fan, so he thought it was the greatest thing going. I also attended the Cable House Key, which the mayor will go into further detail. I'm glad we're working on the air condition for you guys here in the building. I'm hoping that it gets completed without any hesitation or problem.
Did I comment on that? Woof.
And in working with Team Volusia, I'm on their board, and obviously I'm on several different committees. I do have a letter, Mayor, for you to sign, accrediting Team Volusia. So if you can sign that, if you're willing to, let me know, and I'll make sure that gets to them. And
Well, that letter has come from the Volusia League of Cities. No,
Team Volusia.
Team Volusia. They're seeking a certification, and they would like the City of DeBarry's support in seeking this certification. Each of you have a copy of it in front of you. If there's no objection to providing that support so they can get their international certification, then please speak now, or else we feel it's a good endeavor, and for them to get their international certification, it's a good endeavor. So,
and that's all for me.
Okay. Since we last met, I did go to the ribbon cutting for a new business in DeBarry, Collaborative Title. They're over in Summer Haven. And sometimes in our travels, we aren't over in Summer Haven as frequently, but there's a nice business center there with real estate and affiliated businesses, and this is a new specific title firm. That was a very nice event. I think that it was the Hispanic Chamber that was the sponsoring chamber for the event. I did attend CompStat, and that was Thursday, a week ago, I guess.
2 weeks ago.
And DeBarry's crime statistics are laudable as they have been. It is an interesting thing if you have a chance to go sometime to hear all of the specifics. And the area-wide drug enforcement activity has been really ramped up, and there's a lot of things that you've seen in the news, and there's some other things that they're working on that they can only allude to. Most of them are have the majority of participants in other areas, but occasionally they include somebody in DeBerry in the net. I did go to the county council to support the current millage rate for Echo and retaining the 5-cent gas tax. And as we've discussed, we were successful in getting the council to vote the way we had hoped they would. But I will tell you that the current council is very much looking to where they can change some tax and say, we cut taxes. And some of that is, a worthy effort, and some of it is seemingly not with a full realization of the impact on other budgets, not just their own. So it was good to be there and to represent for the municipalities. I made specific DeBerry case, but the argument was the same. Yesterday, we had a truly heartwarming event in that we had a small parade in Rivington from the amenity center to the house that was given mortgage-free to Staff Sergeant Matthew Cable, his wife Ensley, and their little boy Cade. And it was one of those truly heartwarming kinds of events. We had Senator Tom Wright, Senator Jason Broder came, Danny Robbins from the County Council came, the Vice Mayor was there, Carmen was MC for the event, Dreamfinder Homes was the builder, all their trades contributed their things at cost. Building Homes for Heroes is the charity that oversaw making sure this was a mortgage-free home with most of the things donated or done at cost. And then Rivington, developer, Reader, who you've had here many times, and their equity partner, Hillsong, out of Texas. And this is something that I was aware of for some time, but they were open about it at this ceremony, so I will mention that is it Hillsong or
Hillwood.
Hillwood. The Hillwood money that is part of the equity part, the money for Rivington that goes through Reader, is the money from the Ross Perot family. And Building Homes for Heroes has been strongly supported by the Perot family. The charity itself was not started by them, but the charity itself, this home was the 341st home to be given mortgage-free to a deserving veteran, and they are expanding to do it also for certain first responders with stories that would make them eligible. And it was just a wonderful community event. The family is overjoyed. They're happy to be here in DeBerry. The VFW was there with the colors. Pine Ridge sent students who sang the national anthem, and it was just a wonderful day. I did attend TPO this morning, nothing more than our regular examination of lists of priority projects, funding for Sun Trail, etc. And I'm proud to say that with DeBerry recently changing some representation there, I checked the attendance record for all DeBerry contributors to the various subcommittees, and DeBerry is now being represented in every subcommittee every single month, which is what I had wanted to see happen. I'd also like to offer my congratulations to Sherry Simmons and Vice Mayor Butlin on being appointed to Florida League of Cities legislative committees for the coming year. Sherry will be on the Land Use and Economic Development Subcommittee and Phyllis on the Utilities, Natural Resources, and Public Works Committees. So
You're welcome.
I appreciate your service. Also, congratulations to Vice Mayor Butlin for receiving this is a bunch of words, Silver Certificate of Leadership from the Certificate Program for Elected Officials, which is a program of the Florida League of Cities.
Thank you, thank you. I want you to know that Lois saw that ribbon on me. I should have brought my ribbons because they give me, and she's like, how come I don't have one of those? How come I don't have, I said, I don't know, Lois, you're the mayor. You know, probably didn't earn it. Well, she went right to the desk and sure enough, they
They missed
They
giving
missed
her
her.
ribbon?
And they made sure she got it, and she wore her ribbon, so she was very excited. I got my ribbon, so I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So thank you. No,
Yes,
not a
but
problem.
congratulations.
Thank you.
It always serves DeBerry when one of us individually serves in a role that pursues the greater good. It reflects well on the city. City manager.
Yeah, just a little update. Thanks to y'all. We're working with the city of Deltona, and just give you a little briefing on that so the public understands. Mayor Chazet and Mayor Avila from Deltona have a great working relationship. They had a very contentious meeting on August the 7th regarding their non-ad valorem assessments, and shortly thereafter, a great portion of their staff left. The city manager, the assistant city manager, the growth management director, and others. So the mayor reached out to me and asked to see what we could do to help. I made some recommendations. She asked me to call Mayor Avila, which I did. And certainly he had some major concerns, because at that particular point in time when I talked to him, there was no city manager, no acting city manager, no interim city manager, nobody. And he was concerned about whether or not they can get to the budget next month. And so we offered to help. I did go to their council meeting regarding and they did appoint an interim city manager, Glenn Wickham, and to his credit, he's done a tremendous job over the last 3 or 4 days.
Yes.
And also went to the meeting on Monday where they were talking about hiring a city manager and the process. And right now, I'm working with Mr. Wickham to try to corral the council into one vision, which is very difficult at this particular moment in time. We're working with the criteria. Some of the council members want nobody from the history, no experience from government. Some want people from private sector. So some want a firm to hire a firm, some don't. Some want a citizens committee. Some want to delegate authority to citizens committee. And so we're trying to pin down the proper process. So I am working with Glenn Wickham, who's the interim city manager, on trying to have a set of standards, what the minimum qualifications should be, what the characteristics of that new city manager should be. I did make a small presentation. They asked me a bunch of questions, and I tried to emphasize that please take your time. This is the most important decision that you're going to make for the next 5 years. And so we'll see how it goes. So during that meeting, they said their finances are in great shape as far as process-wise is concerned. And so I will not be participating in their financial part of their organization. And they made that very clear that everything is great. And so so most of my time will be spent on establishing a process for the city manager search, which is the most important process there. So that's where I'll be occasionally. And it's not affecting my current job or anything else. But I'm glad to help, and I think it shines very, very great on the city of DeBerry on reaching out and helping them. So.
And what I would say is I did watch the meetings where Carmen spoke, or at least the last meeting, and there was appreciation expressed from the dais from the people on the commission. And also today at TPO, at the end of the meeting, there were comments just much as we have here. And the Deltona representative from their commission made a special point of thanking cities for helping them as they face this crisis, and made a specific comment of appreciation for me and for the city of DeBerry. So it is being noticed, and to the degree that we can help them without impinging on doing our core job, which is taking care of DeBerry, I think it's helpful, because we need the cities around us to be functioning well too. It's a regional area here. There are lots of things where we have the same interests and overlapping interests. And, you know, it's not so long ago that we were the city that everybody was laughing about when the papers came out, or the nightly news did their Florida man story, and it happened to be in DeBary. That was honestly one of the reasons that I wanted to see things tightened up, and decided I would put a little bit of time in it to see whether we couldn't get things calmed down. And it's widely noticed that in DeBary, things are working well. And I think we can be generous knowing that, you know, we once were in a position where we had chaos and things weren't moving smoothly, and we didn't have permanent leadership, and we didn't know how to get from interim to permanent, and all of these things that they're going through the throes of now. So thank you for doing that. I know you will keep in mind that your core job is for the city of DeBary.
It is.
And that you're not on the market for whatever hundred thousands they said.
I told them that when I was over there, and
Yes.
I told them that, and it's difficult because I'm just an advisory, so I
Correct.
give options.
Yeah.
I wish I had, I wish I could just advise them where they should go, but unfortunately, I have to give options because
Sure.
I'm not their city manager.
Correct.
So,
Correct. So thank you for that.
sure.
City Attorney, do you have anything to report?
City Attorney's Office has nothing to report this evening. Thank you very much.
Hearing that, we stand adjourned.